As many of you know, Neil was born in Cleveland, Ohio. He had one brother, Don, who was 6 years older than he was. Neil's mother passed in 1954, just a month short of Neil's 14th birthday. His great Aunt Anna, who my family has heard of over the years, took responsibility for helping to care for Neil as she took a bus from downtown Cleveland every day during the week to cook and clean for Neil and his dad, but most importantly, to bake a large can of chocolate chip cookies every week just for her great nephew. I know, she was a special lady. I had the pleasure of knowing her. Neil attended Cleveland Public Schools and graduated from John Marshall High School in 1958. He played sports and achieved academic success, which included something he was very proud of, becoming the mental math champion in a citywide competition. He was the treasurer of his senior class, which gave him an excuse to go to the bank and leave school during the day in car number 1. You have to make note of this. This was car number 1. A 1949 Chevrolet sedan, and then he would stop and pick up a donut on his way back to class. As the treasurer of the class, he also had the opportunity to meet the plant manager of Cleveland Chevrolet to make arrangements for the senior prom to be held in the plant cafeteria. That meeting led to 3 summer jobs and an introduction to General Motors. He was a member of the Knights, and I was never really sure what that was all about, but it appeared to have some clout in the high school, as its members all walked around in black leather jackets. Okay. Neil was an excellent student and was accepted into the School of Engineering at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. And became a brother in SAE Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity. Once again, he was academically successful and was elected into several honorary societies, including Tau Beta Pi, Pi Tau Sigma, and Phi Kappa Psi. I first met Neil in 1961 on a double date in Elmira, New York, which, in addition to housing a state prison, is also the home. It is what it is. Is also the home of a small liberal arts college, then exactly 33.4 miles south of Cornell University. And did I fail to mention it was an all-girls college back then? And Cornell, correct me if I'm wrong, seemed to be lacking females at that time. Is that right, Frank? Okay. He drove down to Elmira in car number 2, a 1958 Plymouth Savoy hardtop, with a friend of his whom I had been dating. And Neil had a date with an upperclassman from Elmira. Fast forward, the friend and I broke up. Neil and upperclassman broke up. And Neil needed a date for spring weekend. He asked my prior friend if he had any suggestions for a date, and he did. He suggested me. Needless to say, we had a great time on our first date, and when he dropped me off on Sunday night, I told my roommate I thought I had found my perfect man. Oh. We dated for the remainder of our years at Elmira and Cornell. Our courtship was pretty smooth. We really didn't disagree about very many things, except for one thing. Chicken noodle soup. He thought that Campbell's chicken noodle soup was the best. I thought that Lipton's chicken noodle soup was the best. So what do you think? Hands, please. Chicken noodle soup? Campbell's? Lipton's? Woo! Yay! This was a serious disagreement, I'm telling you. But we overcame it eventually by keeping both brands in the pantry. Thank goodness we were on the same page for Oreos versus Hydrox cookies. I don't know what would have happened with that discussion. We became pinned and then engaged and got married on June 8th, 1963, which happened to be the date between both of our birthdays. His the 6th of June and mine the 10th of June, which also was between our graduations, so we were back and forth between Ithaca and New York. Our honeymoon was a driving trip from New York to Florida. That trip really should have been my first clue that this man was obsessed with keeping track of things. I have a chart. That reminds me of the time Neil was giving a speech with slides, in the carousel, and somehow it wasn't locked up, and all of the slides came out, and they were all over the stage, and they didn't have time to put them back in order, and so as they pulled one up, he spoke to that slide, and another one up, he spoke to that slide. Never phased him, but that's not in my speech. Okay, so I have this chart that tracked our honeymoon, that we left from from Ithaca down to Miami and both. He kept track of the cost of every breakfast, every lunch, every dinner. Lodging, the most we ever spent for a hotel room was $20. I can tell you how much gas he put in the car at each stop, what the cost was, and it took 2 separate cans of oil to put in the car at 65 cents a can. And the total cost of our 18-day honeymoon was $579.61. Let's see where I am. And since I have been mentioning cars with numbers several times, I think you can see a pattern here. You might be interested in knowing that in 62 and a half years of marriage, we owned 55 cars. Now, granted, he worked for General Motors. I can tell you that we paid $3,090 for our first car. I can tell you how long we kept it and what we sold it for. Car number 20, because here is his list. This is his. And I have all the papers this high on the total of this. Car number 21 was a 2-door 1980 Oldsmobile Omega, purchased on December 21st of 1979 for $6,368.62. Car number 48 was purchased in July of 2008. It was a Buick Lucerne. This was a lease from suburban Cadillac in Troy, and the base cost was over $30,000. Zach was looking at this and he said, "I can't believe this, Grandma." I can tell you all the details on all 55 cars, since he kept a file on every single one of them. I had no idea until I started cleaning out his files. Just one more thing about this obsession with data. Our daughter Karen, found this book while going through some of the boxes in the basement. I had never seen it before, ever. I mentioned he was from Cleveland, and therefore a huge Cleveland Indians fan. That I knew, but what I didn't know is that at age 8, he put together a notebook, and I'll leave it out here later so if you want to peek at it, that includes the layout of the 8 major baseball parks in the United States and their seating capacities. you all interested in that? All the American League umpires, pictures of all the Indians players, baseball cards, and even a picture of the airplane they traveled in. 8 years old. Our first year of marriage was spent at Cornell while Neil was getting his master's. Neil was the head resident of a freshman dorm, and we lived on the lower level of university halls and with 150 freshman boys. That to say in the least was very interesting, especially as one of the students kept a snake collection in the cabinets in the dorm room, unbeknownst to us. So one day, while Neil was up talking to this particular freshman, one of the snakes came out from the cabinet above him and was swaying back and forth. And just as he closed the door to leave, the snake dropped down. Can you even imagine had it dropped a second sooner? Neil received 3 major job offers when he finished at Cornell. Carrier Air Conditioning in upstate New York, which we just spent 5 years there, Mobil Oil in New Jersey, and General Motors in Detroit. It's obvious which he chose. We packed up the car and moved to Michigan, renting our first apartment in Royal in 1964. He began his 40-year career with GM at the Research Laboratories, otherwise known as GMR, in July of 1964 and hit the ground running. I believe one of the assignments he was most proud of was heading up Project Trilby. He was scared to death when first selected because, as he stated, quote, "I didn't have a clue how we were going to satisfy all of the proper project objectives." It was a 5-year, multi-million-dollar project that was completed in 4 years. That was due to the outstanding group of people from GMR. I think one of his other favorite assignments was the 4.5 years he spent in Oshawa as the General Director of Engineering and Product Planning for GM of Canada. He loved Canada. Loved our penthouse condo. Someone was telling me today that they were jealous that they didn't have that. It was right on the riverfront. Loved the people and was proud of the opening of the Regional Engineering Center in Oshawa, in which there is a conference room named after Neil. I remained here in the States and as principal of my teachers over there, and with a smirk on his face, he would tell people he was having an international affair. And certainly last but not least was being elected the 2001 International SAE President. Wow, that was quite a year. We traveled the world and met many, many wonderful people. The only negative of that year was 9/11, which prevented us to travel to India, where there were so many people with whom SAE had close ties. Neil gave SAE credit for developing his organizational, business, and leadership skills, plus providing means for him to pay back to the engineering profession and the automotive industry. I guess I do also have to mention being interviewed by Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes in 2003. That was certainly a fave of his. He thought that was cool. After retirement, he became managing director of the SAE Automotive Resources Institute. It was a project to make it easy for retirees to become consultants and to utilize their vast expertise to solve current technical and business problems in an array of sectors, including the military. He would call it his dating game. In closing, I would like to mention just a few of Neil's favorite things in case you didn't know. Chocolate chip cookies, #1 in his food group. Potato chips, so you notice potato chips and chocolate chip cookies. White wine, Pinot Grigio, thanks to Cornell. Watching sports of any kind. We had 9 TVs so that he wouldn't miss any place. He went from room to room. Peanut butter, Reese's peanut butter cups. Flank steak, marinated in my mom's recipe. My cooking, smart man. The movie Magnificent Seven, which I know he watched more than 7 times. Dancing the Twist, until he blew his knee out. The Hustle, which we were going to try and do that today, but I didn't think we'd have enough room. His pet dogs, Taffy and Daisy. Skiing, back in the day at Vail. Biking in Europe, especially Mont Ventoux with Duncan, and I know a couple of you in here know who that is. Traveling, cruising, reading 385 books in the past 19 years, and yes, that's another spreadsheet. Acrostics, puzzles. Have any of you ever done an acrostic puzzle? Unbelievable. Every week. Golfing any day, especially with the SBW and TGG guys. Bowling, all his wonderful friends and his loving family. Not his guitar. Neil was so many things to so many people. He is gone and he will be missed. But no one can take away our memories. He was my husband, my friend, and I will grieve along with many of you, but are we all grateful we knew him. Now I'd like to introduce our son, Kevin. Say a few words.
First, thank everyone here for being here. It means a lot to my family. See how many people cared for my dad and valued the person that he was. So today we honor a man who didn't have to be our father, but chose to be. That choice alone says everything about the kind of person he was. My dad didn't measure family by blood, but by love, devotion, and showing up. From the very beginning, he made us feel wanted, safe, and truly his. He taught us that being a parent isn't just about giving life, it's about giving love every single day. He showed patience when we tested boundaries, faith when we doubted ourselves, and honor and humor when we needed to lighten the load a little bit. He built a home where we belonged, where laughter sat right beside the tough talks, and where love was never in short supply. His steady presence gave us a solid foundation every child needs. One built not on obligation, but on choice and commitment. Though we'll miss him terribly, we take comfort in knowing that his influence will carry on in how we live and how we treat others and how we treat our families. His legacy isn't just the stories people will tell. It's written in who we all are today. His love shaped our lives and will continue to do so. So, rest in peace. Thanks again for coming.
And here's our number one daughter, Karen.
Hopefully you do better than I did.
When we were planning this celebration of life, my mom said she'd like Kevin and I to both make speeches. My stomach dropped, my heart rate soared. I think I became short of breath, fear of public speaking. Quite the opposite of my dad, as many of you know. I told her there's no way. I just can't do it. But then, once I regained my composure, I could hear my dad in his voice saying, "Karen, get over it. Do it for me." Maybe with a slight head shake and an eye roll. So here we are, here with me. So I'd like to share a few things, or memories I have of my dad. Not about Neil Schilke, the GM engineer, or the Cornell class president, or SAE president, the list goes on and on. I want to say a little about him as a dad, a girl dad in my case. Many of you might know that my dad loved to dance. He would always be the first one out on the dance floor. This included the daddy-daughter dances he would take me to. I remember him trying so hard to get me out on the dance floor so we could be the first ones out there. And I was a painfully shy little girl, so it must have been quite a challenge for him. He was that dad who taught me how to dance by letting me put my little feet on his big shoes, would hold my hands, and off we went with him leading the way. When I was a bit older, I would look out the window at the same time every evening to see him turn down onto our road on his way home from work. I would get so excited and try to run down to the end of the driveway to greet him. If I got there in time, he would stop and open the car door to let me crawl up onto his lap, and he would let me steer the car up the driveway while he controlled the pedals. That's exciting. Steering the car eventually would lead me into wanting to mow the lawn since we had a riding mower. He showed me how to check the oil, how to change the spark plugs, and I essentially became his outdoor helper. And I loved it. A lot more than my brother did. I remember we'd take tons of leaves rake tons of leaves onto a giant tarp. And of course I would lay on top of the leaf pile, and my dad would drag the whole thing, me included, up the hill and into the back lot behind our house. My dad was like Superman to me. I remember thinking that when I was little, that he was Superman. Big, strong, brave, smart, could handle anything, and he fought for good. As I got older, it was, when's the last time you got your oil changed, Karen? Oh, have you changed your furnace filter? Or the dreaded, file your taxes yet? Yes, Dad, I just did that. He was always looking out, always there, steadfast love and support. It was the quiet lessons, the leading by example, and I'm so lucky, and I'm so grateful. When my brother and I were talking about our speeches and what we would talk about, I wasn't sure what to say, being that there's so much to say. But I knew I wanted to mention things that were unique and memorable between him and I. My sister-in-law, Meadow, was there and said, "Karen, one thing I've noticed throughout the years is that your dad, whenever you would come through the door or into the room, his face would light up. And he would always say, 'Hi, sweetheart.' Not 'hi there' and not 'hey, Karen.' 'Hi, sweetheart.' And I thought, you're right. Every time. Wow. Kevin agreed. So I know when I do see him again, I'll get to see his face light up and hear those words, 'Hi, sweetheart.' So, and now my oldest son and the oldest grandson, Zach.
my grandpa is Neil Arthur Schilke. He is a man who has accomplished things that most people can only dream of, and he did it all himself. I mean, he went apparently from digging ditches as a job to, I mean, being a head of automotive industry and so much more. He has really done it all, and he's done this and become, you know, an amazing family man. And it took me a lot longer, I think, to truly appreciate that and really understand the gravity of what all that means. But now, as his first 31-year-old grandson, I do understand it just a little bit more. But he was always amazing to me, right from the first moment I remember of him, which is, I'm assuming one of my first memories as a little boy. And I got to see him as a grandson does, who just loved to be with his grandpa. So I'm just going to share some memories over a long period of time that I had with him. I lived with my grandma and my grandpa for the first 4 years of my life. And they've really been a big part of my life the entire journey since. I mean, they've seen me in all of my stages of life. I mean, I was, you know, in their basement, you know, building with Connects, listening to Star Wars soundtracks, and Connects, by the way, is the Lego alternative. Through my very awkward teen years, I grew up a lot through that. Through college, and fire up chips, by the way. Sorry, Cornell. And then, of course, through me starting my professional life, you know, recently, and growing up through my 20s, and learning so much more about what life really is. You know, I started as a pretty low-profile kid. I kept to myself a lot, quiet, just kind of mind my own business. He used to call me Bug, because apparently, instead of running around the store causing unknown chaos in whatever place we went to, I was more so glued up to his leg. And apparently I was more like I was crawling up it, apparently, so, Bug. And I used to spend a lot of weekends over at my grandparents' place. In the mornings, maybe after breakfast, we would take the puzzles, as she mentioned, from the local papers, Sudoku namely, and later on others. And he would, blow them up on his copier, and he'd take them over to us, and it became a new competition to see, who was going to finish first. And if he were here right now, he would even probably admit to losing. Sometimes. Sometimes. It was just like 50-50. And we did still even do them, even as I got into middle and high school. It was just usually followed by the thing I didn't want to do, which was my math homework. So, which, by the way, he was the real best teacher that I had, not the ones that were in my school, but he was the best one right next to me. If I didn't get the material, he would say, all right, let me take a look at that. And he would take my math book, he would go off to his study, I wouldn't see him for about 15-20 minutes. He comes back and he's like, here's what you gotta know. And he teaches it to me better than my teachers ever really did. And so, not that that was the only reason I went over for those weekends, but it was a massive benefit. He is, without a doubt, the smartest man that I have ever known. And he was also deliberate, wise, caring, and in my opinion, really funny sometimes. I mean, and not even always intentionally either. He sometimes it would be like a look that he gave me, or maybe just the gestures and the way that he does things. But I found them to be honestly iconic. I lovingly call these grandpa-isms, privately. He would always do, one of my favorites is he would do this little shrug, he'd be like, get this look, this. And he didn't have to say a word, but he was just like, he was saying dot, and you're like, okay, well, I got to obviously do something a little better here. And he'd just like crack a joke, he'd make like little subtle comments, maybe not even really expecting anyone to hear, but he would look around just subtly, just see if anyone was watching or paying attention, but if he noticed that you got it, it was great. And we'd start laughing all over again. Those were some of my favorite moments. It was just great. He always knew how to convey a lot with so little, and he had no problem letting you know if he disagreed with you. He made that as apparent as it could be. And let's be honest, he was usually right. Or at the very least, we saw where he was coming from. And he and I, of course, and many of us didn't always agree. Obviously, there's a famous disagreement about soup. But it turns out, I think all of us are a little stubborn. It's actually a pretty common Schilke trait you'll come to see, I'm sure. But I think it's just that we learn from the best. But, you know, none of that ever really mattered. And I think we all knew that deep down. It was our bond. It was our love that always triumphed. He wasn't a very outwardly emotional guy, as many of you know, but his caring heart always shined through. He was always dedicated to his family. He helped me out in so many ways. I mean, I can't even list them all if we were here all day long. But he's helped me even at my most weakest, my most vulnerable moments. And he still will. Because you see, he actually told me the most important thing, the best thing that I have going for me is that I like myself. And he's said that to me since I was super little. And it's a really easy thing to get. It's super easy to understand, but I think it took me a lot longer for that to sink in. You know, we grow up, we go through so many challenges in our lives. So many things test you, and to your very core even. But he said, my greatest strength, and he's not one to mince words, you all know that, is that I like myself. And so, I don't know if he's even said that to anybody else. I don't know if that was a common trait that he said. But if there is one thing that I want every single person to know, it's that. Like yourself and make it your greatest strength. So I hope through all of the anecdotes and the little moments that we've all said, and myself, that they tell you maybe just a fraction of what my grandpa means to me. He isn't just a beacon of amazing and unbelievable professional accomplishment. He is the example of what it means to be a good person, a good man, a father, a grandfather, and a friend. He is the best grandpa who has ever lived, in my opinion. And I was lucky enough, blessed even, to be a part of his life for over 30 years. And I couldn't be prouder to carry his name with me for the rest of my life and beyond. So, well, your first grandson, Zachary Neil Schilke, for fun.
So you've met number 1 grandson, and now we're going to introduce number 4 grandson, the youngest of the Schilkes, Mrs. Peyton.
Well, I'd be lying if I wasn't a little bit nervous.
Okay, we all were.
Yes. You guys can start laughing at me. I'm not saying there's something in my teeth. Oh. A little better?
Yeah.
My name is Peyton. I'm the youngest grandson of 4, and I'm going to share one of my favorite things about my grandpa. When I was younger, I lived in Colorado, and we didn't see my grandpa a whole lot. But when we did, there was a brief 5 minutes before where it felt like Christmas morning, right before you opened those presents. Actually getting to his house, you were just waiting for him to be around the corner. He always was. To greet you with the nicest smile, he was always eager to meet you, as just as much as you would meet him. When you were talking, he made you feel like the most important person on the planet. And seeing you all here today knows you all felt that feeling too. So thank you for being here.
And last but not least, number 3 grandson, Nolan, is going to come and read a poem for you. These He's our freshman at Michigan State. We won't hold that against him.
Hello, everybody. I'm reading this poem prepared by Grandma. A limb has fallen from the family tree. I keep hearing a voice that says, "Grieve not for me. Remember the best times, the laughter, the song. The good life I lived while I was strong. Continue my heritage. I'm counting on you. Keep smiling, and surely the sun will shine through. My mind is at ease. My soul is at rest. Remembering all, how truly I was blessed." Sorry.
Okay.
Continue traditions, no matter how small. Go on with your life. Don't worry about faults. I miss you all dearly, so keep up your chin until the day comes we're together again.
So, in closing, let you get up and get a drink and some food. Obviously, the theme of today is golf. Neil had a signature golf ball collection, of course, which we have distributed on each table, with more in the barn. We would like each and every one of you to please take a golf ball home with you in remembrance of Neil. And now, if anyone wishes to share other memories, please feel free to come up to the mic. And here comes Boyd. You want to come now? Oh, you're up. And Boyd is a real good friend of mine through Oakland University. I called him one of my elves. And now at Oakland University and the YMCA. And one of Neil's closest friends from Cornell was planning on coming, and his wife is in the hospital. Did you know that? Betsy's in the hospital. And so, but he sent me his remarks that he had been planning to share with you when he was here, and he couldn't. But Floyd agreed when I asked him if he would please read them for us. So for Fred, Hart, Floyd. Thanks, there.
First off, thank you to you, Ro, for a couple of things. One, for organizing this event to give all of us a chance to honor Neil and to celebrate his life. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And more importantly, I appreciate you sharing his record keeping. Denise doesn't think I'm the worst guy ever. By way of introduction, my name is Floyd Allen. I first heard about Neil probably 25 years ago when he first became president of SAE. I met Neil in person a couple of years after that when he and Herb Evers had a joint venture of a engineering consulting activity. And then that was following both of our retirements from the auto industry, GM, myself, and Chrysler. But I didn't really get to know Neil personally until probably 5 years ago, when we both became part of a COVID-created Wednesday morning walking group. We became instant good friends because we have so many professional engineering backgrounds that are in parallel. I can best describe Neil in a couple of words. He was a class act. His many close friends from literally every chapter of his life are good testimony to others feeling exactly the same way about him. What led me to believe that of him? Neil was tall, handsome, personable, athletic, honest, very polished socially, a complete gentleman. He had a sharp, inquisitive mind. He loved analyzing and solving complex problems and was a very skilled handyman. He also, most notably, was able to fit in and make meaningful contributions in almost any group, regardless of whether he knew the group beforehand or had any connection with them in terms of area of expertise. I could go on and on about Neil's characteristics, but I think you get the picture. It's very easy for me to understand why Roe, 60-some years ago, decided that Neil was the keeper. As some of you know, I like to use one-liner quotes to describe things in everyday life. There are 3 quotes that come to mind that I think capture how Neil went about his life. First, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. Secondly, there is never a right time to do the wrong thing, and there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And lastly, live your life in such a way that no one needs to lie at your celebration of life. Neil indeed was a class act. Another outstanding characteristic of Neil was his willingness to devote his personal time to lead various organizations. He did so numerous times during his illustrious career. Many of us probably have the management skills to do that, but not very many of us are willing to dedicate our own time and be so generous for the good of an organization. Besides this friendship, I will greatly miss the many thoughtful conversations I had with Neil over the past few years during our Wednesday morning walks. Sometimes these discussions were serious as we tried to solve the most pressing world problems. They were pretty wide-ranging, included difficult technical issues, business direction, politics, and even on occasion, if we felt particularly clairvoyant, we'd discuss understanding women. These talks were always both fun and enlightening. I was impressed with and valued Neil's thoughtful insight and clear articulation of his thoughts. We didn't always agree, but I greatly admired Neil absolutely displaying that somewhat rare old-school commodity of being able and willing to strongly disagree with someone and still be a close friend. Other walk conversations were focused on sports. Neil loved his sports. He was an avid supporter of the local teams and, of course, his beloved Cornell. Neil wasn't just a fan, he was a student of the games. We shared a strong mutual interest in basketball and football, and frequently relived the week's most exciting games on our walks. Although I never for the life of me could understand his fascination with golf, I know he also enjoyed golf talks with some of the other Wednesday walkers. In addition to our friendship and fun conversations, Neil was a key contributor to our Wednesday walking group. He always helped grow our walk group leader with the presentations and logistics and preparations for our group activities. We all owe a big thank you to Neil for those efforts and his welcoming presence. In closing, Neil, your beloved wife, Ro, your family, and your many friends will miss you dearly. Know that you will always be in our hearts. May you rest in peace, my dear friend. And next, I'd like to read the letter that Rose spoke about from Fred Hart, who was a friend of Neil back when he was a teenager. You know, I know he was an old man, but he knew he was a teenager. But it's surprising the similarity. In Fred Hart's words, I met Neil at Cornell. We were both engineers, he in mechanical engineering, and I in civil. He was a smart guy and respected by the smartest guys in our class. We were both in fraternities, not the same one, but ones located next to each other, so they saw each other enough to occasionally socialize together. We also dated women at Elmira College. He was much more successful than I, being and charming and marrying your mother and grandmother. It took me 20 years later to meet my wife and the chance to enjoy Neil and Ro as a couple. After graduation, Neil went to graduate school, other jobs, and then a successful career at General Motors. His life was much more than his professional life, and And it was during those times that we met again and developed a truly wonderful friendship. He loved Cornell, and he not only received much from Cornell's experience, but he gave much back. He headed the Engineering School Advisory Council. He brought his industrial experiences to help guide the Cornell faculty and students to work on and solve the real-world problems that he, his company, and our world faced. He led our Cornell class for the first time nearly 50 years ago, helping maintain and developing relationships of our classmates to each other and to the university. His leadership in the post-Vietnam era was instrumental in ensuring the growth of leadership corps that was sustained the class of 1962 for the long parts of our 65 years since graduation. He was as comfortable with the university presidents, like Frank Rhodes and Hunter Rawlings, as with classmates and even current undergraduates. The university benefited greatly from our class gifts, which were near the top of the list for historical gifts. More important, he encouraged many of us to join the leadership team and extend friendships. I was one of those who served on the leadership term, doing it because Neil asked. I know there were others who responded to the same call. Finally, when we were all winding down and needed a leader after we were all retiring, once again, Neil answered the call to lead in his final years. I read about Neil following all the Detroit sports team, but he also was extremely attentive to Cornell sports and any other sports that interested us. He went to several hockey games together in Boston, New York, whenever we had a chance to connect. My last email from Neil was one telling me that the score of the Harbor Beach Pirates Division VIII Michigan football championship game. My wife grew up vacationing in Harbor Beach, and he has in parentheses, Division VIII is for the smallest schools in the state. He followed Harbor Beach football as rapidly as if he had lived there. Who knew? His golf interests were legendary. Playing was important, but finding a new way to compete by his intricate competitions was something he shared, not only for those who played in these events, but also those outsiders who he felt should know there were ways to enjoy the game, even when your best moments of golfing had passed you by. It's been special to share a few years with Neil, whose friendship I treasure deeply.
Now, come up, Steve. This is Steve Vernak, a good friend of Bill's. Golfer, bowler, walker,
Most importantly, friend.
friend.
Steve Vernak, my connection with Neil is through General Motors. That's where I first knew Neil, but it wasn't until, because our paths crossed every once in a while, but it wasn't until after, when we were both retired, that I really got to know Neil. And as I got to know Neil in golfing, in the walking group that Floyd talked about, and all that stuff, I found out that, boy, we had a lot in common. And just to illustrate, Ro, you put that beautiful memorial, the video that you did, and in there I thought it was spectacular where you had the various hairstyles of him. Well, that was another thing that Neil and I shared, the lost hairstyle. But anyway, I wanted to just take a few minutes.
It's all yours.
Okay, to just, if I was going to entitle this, I would say it's The Neil That I Know Is. And so with that said, I'm going to start with the Neil that I know is a wizard. And I say that because, as Floyd also mentioned earlier, he was a leader, and a very respected leader. A leader that actually, when he spoke, he listened. because you knew that everything he had to say was good, it was genuine, and it was well thought out. In terms of, and he was creative. And to illustrate the creativity, and this is in the golf league, and because you're going to learn a little bit about social retired Neil as I talk, not the professional one, not the academic, not the other thing. This is the retired Neil. So you're going to be able to hear that some of this creativity occurred when involved with this very large golf group upon retirement, which, as you said, was SBW. It was 60 to 100 people. And he said, one of the things that is missing is the social aspect. How about if I get a group of 16 to 18 people together and we'll golf on a different day, and that way we'll finish at a specified amount of time, a short amount of time, and we'll get an opportunity to socialize with one another. So he went upon himself and he picked out 16 to 18 people, okay? Now, if you look at these 16 to 18 people and you look at their personalities and their idiosyncrasies, you'd say, how in God's creation could they ever mesh? But it's due to his wizardry that he was able to make it mesh, and to this day it's wonderful. So he is our wizard. And to be perfectly clear, he is a wizard of odds. The Neil that I know is a competitor, and you heard a little about it prior to this. And Neil and I, whether it was golfing or bowling and all that stuff, he was always a competitor. And in all those times where I would think that I had the upper hand, and we're getting close to the end, I would look at him, and then all of a sudden, I'd see this Neil. It was the Neil that was standing there very confidently. He's got a glint in his eye, and he's got a little upturn. It's not smiling, but just a little upturn of his mouth. And you look at him and you go, oh shit. And sure enough, he pulled out his wizardry, and more often than not, I was the one reaching into my pocket and giving him something at the end of the round. The Neil that I know is a champion. I don't know if any of you really noticed this little character right here. Okay? It's a bobblehead. Okay? That bobblehead is probably, Neil was well recognized in his life. You've heard a lot about it. In retirement, in our golf league, a number of years ago, we decided to have a full season competition. And it would end with a ranking, and then you would have match play. And for those that don't play golf, match play is when you take the best seeded player, number one, against the lowest seeded, and then it's single elimination. He came through that first part, one of the lower seeds. Now you have to go through 4 weeks of competition, and he ended up playing against arguably the best 4 golfers in our league. I don't know what turned him on, what lit his fire, but he was amazing. And he ended up beating every single one of those in dominant fashion that very first year of it. And it's called the Bobblehead Championship. Now you don't get a plaque, you don't get a trophy. What you get is a bobblehead. And when you get a chance, Rope bought it here, see, bobblehead. This bobblehead is made in your likeness, and you get to attire it the way you want. So take a look, that's Neil, and it's got his Cornell hat, it's got an attire that he chose, it's got his wizard nickname on the lapel, and it says champion on the bottom, because he certainly is our champion for sure. Take a look at that. Before I get into my closing comments, the Neil that I know is humorous. You heard Zach, you heard others. He's not, I'm going to tell a joke repetitively kind of guy. I'm not a Nate Bargatze. I'm going to get on stage and tell a joke or any stuff. But his funniness comes with when he wants to make a point. And he just had a unique way of just bringing it to you. For example, I'm not going to use any names because that would be a roast. And we cover that in a roast. But there was one individual in our golf league who had a propensity to talk loudly, talk a lot, talk whether it's opinion, conjecture, whatever was going on. It was in one of those instances where he found a pause when this person took a breath, and Neil looked at him and said, "Did you ever pass third grade?" The rant stopped, and I gotta tell you, that incident has been brought on many, many times after that, and it'll keep on coming on. So it was many, many incidents like that. That was his humor, and that was very, very cool. I've got just a couple more things. I'm gonna read them here because I'm gonna tone it down from humor to serious. These are my thoughts because in the relatively short amount of time that I've known Neil, he truly became a very close friend. I knew just how close when, on February 7th, I was informed of his sudden and unexpected passing. And at that point, I realized just how close Neil was to me. It was hard, it was emotional, and I still think of it a lot to this day. He's left a void. However, I don't see him going away because I still see him with us. I said the Neil that I know is, because I didn't want to say was, because I'm convinced that he is always going to be with us. He will. And if there's anything that he's doing right now, he's paving the path for all of us to get to where he is so that we don't have any obstacles, it's smooth, and we're going to get there. And if anyone might need a good word, I hope he's given that good word for any of us that just may need a good word to get there. When I talked to Ro, it wasn't that long after his passing. She was looking through his high school yearbook, and she was looking at what everybody had been commenting on in his high school years and all that stuff. And that got me to thinking how, all of us, we go through high school and very, very few friends do we keep continuum from high school, if any. But I gotta tell you, if Neil and I went to high school together, I'd be willing to bet my bottom dollar that we'd be friends this whole time. I'd be willing to bet on it. So with that, the last thing I want to say is that he was a great guy. He was a great friend. And finally, boy, was he ever proud of his family, and Ro, boy, did he adore you. Thank you.
Anyone else? You don't have to, but we'll listen. But then I'm just going to say, thank you all for coming. This was so special, and I know he loved it. And don't forget to take a round of applause. Remember Neil.